Each member of the Brookings leadership team understands the district desires mass customized learning and has expectations of how to get there. How do you do that without seeming to be whipping anyone into shape?
Really, I believe it comes down to taking thoughtful and intentional steps, communicating very clearly that this is starting with a pathway, and the pathway then will create opportunities further. I really ascribe to the notion, the idea that you take people as far as they can see and then they see further. And really that's what this is about. It's about taking people on a journey and utilizing the tools that we have, the technology. We utilize a lot of data. We take hard looks at what our data is telling us relative to students and their learning experiences. We have a lot of communication. We work diligently through our entire district to communicate those ideas, and looking at the standards-based report card, for example, that we've implemented, and really focusing on those standards and those learner outcomes as the premise. And nobody's going to argue with those things. So you lay those things out first and foremost, and it really starts with a bigger vision. And it starts with a vision that asks a good question. And the good question is, are we truly optimizing the learning experience for our students? And can we do better? And that's where we embrace, as we're walking this journey of customized learning, simultaneously we're walking on a path of continuous improvement. And I think those two fit hand in glove with each other, because it's looking at the data, it's utilizing a continuous improvement model of assessing, reassessing, implementing, checking, adjusting, and constantly benchmarking against ourselves as well as others on what are we doing to be the best that we can in terms of our student experiences. So it really is about taking people along the pathway, listening a great deal, taking a lot of input, and understanding that any initiative in education, anything, to be done with fidelity needs to be done intentionally, and it needs to be done over time. You can't just turn a switch and say we've arrived, because it's really about establishing culture in the whole process too. So those are just a few thoughts that I have.
Well, and on the ground and daily, I would say my job is to make sure I set the expectations for the staff correctly, so that it grows organically towards what we hope is the vision for MCL, and actually just for our students, and good instructional strategy. So the two things that we've tried to implement are engagement, and then use the Danielson framework as kind of a lever so that there are expectations that move in that direction. And if you use the Danielson framework and you'd like to be distinguished, then you have to be a customized learning environment. And the Brookings School District has hung their hat on engagement, and so if you'd like your students to be active in the classroom rather than passive, the only way to do that is to find ways for them to select some of their own pathways and feel some ownership. So now what happens is it grows organically, because the instructors are coming to you and you're having critical conversations that are saying, you're not quite meeting that, how do we get there? The system has to change, because the system is what's confining them. So within what Dr. Willard had mentioned as well, that there's a global vision and we're trying to get to that place, but in addition, now we have to take the seeds of the reality of day by day, how we interact, and make sure that that changes. And I always compare it to like your hair growing. You don't notice it till you need a haircut. And so I think it's the same here, that you do the day by day, and then one day you look around and wow, look what has been created. And I think Brookings has done an incredible job of that already.
And one of the challenges with working in a larger system is there are more learning centers or more buildings and schools. And so I think one of the things that's been critical and really important in this whole process is, like Dr. Willard and Dr. Lean have both alluded to, it's that shared vision. Everyone knows where we want to be and where we're moving, and we make sure that we don't lose sight of that. And when we do, Dr. Willard reins us back in and shares, this is the vision, this is how we want our learners to experience school in the Brookings School District. And so it's just so important that regardless of the size of your school system, that you always have that shared vision at the front of all the decisions that you make.
And just to add to that, Dr. Willard also does a great job, and I'm sure he could model for other superintendents of it. The reining back in is always positive. it's not a reining back in on criticism, it's a reining back in of, wow, look what we can do.
Right.
And so we always feel, I think, incredibly optimistic that we can meet whatever that vision is, and it's because we have a leader who creates that.
And that support, because sometimes some of what we're doing, that organic, helping the vision grow at our learning centers, can be a little bit scary and challenging. And so for me personally, I just know as a building leader, knowing that our superintendent is going to have our back and he's going to do what he can to help support us, that's really important. And I think that helps all of us be responsible risk takers and move through some of those challenges together. This isn't an easy journey, but with a good leadership team, makes it much less daunting.
Well, and I like what you just said about the responsible risk taking, because that's really an important attribute of this, because it is that mindset that in order to make movement, in order to make change, you have to inherently take a risk, and we have to create a culture that accepts that with that risk may come a failure. And the question is, are we failing forward? And if we are, who can criticize that? So again, I as much as I get credit, I have to give it back, because again, it's having courageous leaders, people that are willing to be leaders in a space that offers an opportunity to be courageous, is really important as well, because it's pretty easy for an individual to shirk back when there's that inevitable pressure coming of, boy, you're moving my cheese, this isn't the way we've done things, I wasn't trained in this, or a host of other reasons that people will give. It really comes back to that shared leadership and understanding that with that shared leadership is that shared vision.